Barbara Corcoran has said that now is the very best time to buy a home. Now you remember Barbara, she's the multi-millionaire real estate mogul from Shark Tank. She went on to say that although the days of 2 to 3% interest rates are gone, the interest rates will come back down, and once they get to somewhere in the 5% range, the world will jump back in, there'll be no houses for sale, and the prices are gonna skyrocket. In fact, she said they're gonna go up by 10 to 15%. So did she get it right? Look, far be it from me to disagree with the OG real estate legend of New York City, but what Barbara has given here is blanket advice. And my advice to you is never follow blanket advice when it comes to the biggest financial transactions of your life. Did she get it right or did she get it wrong is a great question. But more importantly, who should listen to her advice? Should you, based on your financial position, be thinking about buying a home in 2024? I'm gonna give you 3 shockingly simple criteria that will save you money, keep you from financial ruin, and help you decide, should you buy a house in 2024 or should you stay on the fence? But first, what would cause someone as knowledgeable as Barbara Corcoran to give that blanket advice in the first place? And what is she basing it on? Now, Barbara's basic contention here is based on a very sound read of the underlying market mechanics. You all know this already. If we have more buyers that want to buy than homes for sale, then prices go up. If we have more homes for sale than buyers that want to buy, then prices go down. Also, usually, if mortgage rates go up, prices go down because less people can afford to buy a home. And when interest rates go down, prices tend to go up because more buyers flood into the marketplace. But what if the market doesn't respond like it's supposed to? Because that's exactly what's happening right now. We have shockingly low inventory and have since early on in the pandemic. In fact, right now, as of the time of this recording, Placerville, where I'm sitting, has a 1.65 month inventory. Now that means if no more houses come on the market at the rate we're selling them today, I'd be out of houses to sell in less than 2 months. Now, a robust seller's market is 3 months or less of inventory. A stable or neutral market is 4 to 6 months of inventory, and a strong buyer's market is 6 months or more of inventory. If any of you lived through the Great Recession and were paying attention, you remember that market. It was also crazy, but in a very different way. So right now, we still have a very robust seller's market. Now, adding to that problem is the fact that our construction industry simply isn't keeping pace with family formations in the US. Since 2012, we have fallen way behind. I mean, millions and millions of units behind. So that means less homes are being built than families are being formed. Now, the math here gets a little muddy sometimes depending on how you account for multifamily dwellings and how you account for people who choose to rent and not buy, but the estimates range from 2.1 million on the low end to 6.5 million too few units on the high end. Freddie Mac comes right down the middle at 3.8 million with their estimate. Depending on who you listen to, it doesn't really matter. Either way, we've got millions and millions of people who want a home that we don't have homes for. That's going to continue to keep pressure on the market and continue to keep upward pressure on prices, which is going to continue to exacerbate the inventory crisis. And that is part of what's keeping our prices stable to even increasing right now in the marketplace, even though by all rights, prices should be going down due to the very high interest rates. Now look, all of this is even further exacerbated by the golden handcuffs of the 2 to 3% interest rates from the pandemic era loans and refis. None of those sellers want to come out and exchange their 2 to 3% interest rates for a nearly 8% interest rate right now. And I don't blame them. I don't want to do that either, and neither do you. So what does that mean? It means very few people are choosing to sell their homes. They're not moving, they're not buying up, the retirees aren't buying down, everybody's just staying put. So we were already millions and millions of units behind with the new construction slowdowns, and now we are even further behind because the residential resale homes just aren't coming to market. This means there's no easing in sight for the inventory crisis. Those market mechanics are what created the insanely competitive real estate market that we all went through in 2021 and all the way until July of 2022, when the interest rates went up and the market shifted. Now, the fundamental market mechanics have not changed since July of 2021. They're the same today. We still have a robust buyer pool that far outnumbers the number of homes we have for sale, which continues the upward price pressure. There's one reason and one reason only that those buyers aren't buying, and that's the 8% interest rates. Those interest rates are at a 23-year high, and it's keeping the buyer pool standing back and not buying for the moment. Now, Barbara Corcoran's contention is that as soon as those rates drop into the 5% range, all those buyers will pour back into the market and prices will skyrocket. In fact, she says they'll skyrocket by 10 to 15%. Now, I think she's right. On this, she's got it spot on. And in fact, I actually think the market will start going again by the time we get into the mid to low sixes in interest rates. I don't even think it'll take into the fives. So Barbara has nailed the market mechanics on this, and she's gotten it right. But, and it's a big but, she's given blanket advice here. And if you follow blanket advice on the largest financial transactions of your life, you do so at your own peril. Her advice needs to be filtered through the lens of your own financial situation and run by your own financial advising team, whoever that is for you, your accountant, your trust attorney, whoever that is, you need to run it by them and make sure that you are the type of buyer that should buy in 2024. So who is that and how do you tell? I'm going to give you right now the 3 insanely simple criteria to determine whether you're one of the people who should buy right now or whether you should stay on the fence. Look, if at the end of this video you still aren't sure if you're the type of buyer who should be jumping into the market in 2024 or not, feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, reach out. I get calls from buyers like you every day looking to begin their home buying journey and not knowing where to start. As you can see by this video, the backbone of my business is educating buyers so they can make good financial decisions when it comes to real estate. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help. This first criteria is a doozy, but it comes with one caveat, which is this isn't financial advice. Like Barbara Corcoran, I too don't know your financial situation. So you need to vet everything I'm saying through that team of professional advisors that you use to keep your finances on track. All right, let's get stuck right into it. Buying a home is the largest financial purchase of most people's lives, and it comes with a lot of additional fees and costs that people don't anticipate. In fact, it almost always ends up being more expensive than you think. Most people know that you need to bring in your down payment, but a lot of buyers don't understand the cost of closing the transaction. Closing costs are a significant line item, and I can't tell you the number of times I've finished up a buyer consultation with a family and had them have to go back and spend a few more months saving before they're prepared to enter the market. In fact, in California, if you're buying a home with a loan, you can anticipate up to 3% of the purchase price in closing costs. So if you're buying a $500,000 house, you may end up with as much as $15,000 in closing costs at the end. And this doesn't even account for all the other purchases that come along with buying a house. In some cases, you don't get a full suite of appliances with the home when you make the purchase, so you're gonna have to buy some, and those can be quite expensive. A lot of times you're purchasing a home that's far bigger than the one you're renting, which is part of why it's so exciting. But most people don't have all the furniture they need to furnish that new home and have to go shopping. All of these things take more money out of your budget than you anticipated, and that doesn't even account for all the fun follow-on purchases of things to personalize your new home and make it yours. Now which throw rug best represents me? Now, of course, all of those financial realities are present in every real estate market. They're just of greater importance in a market like ours because of the pressure of higher interest rates creating higher payments, making your housing cost a bigger line item in your monthly budget. Now, you might be saying, hey, Rich, I'm gonna refinance away that high rate as soon as I can when rates come down. I'll get a lower interest rate, a lower payment, and everything will be all right. Now, I'm gonna address that scenario later in this video and all the things you should be concerned about there. But first, for now, higher interest rates mean higher payments, and higher payments mean a greater financial burden every month for you. So the very first criteria to decide whether you're the type of buyer that should consider jumping into the 2024 real estate market is, are you a well-capitalized buyer? Now, what do I mean by that, well-capitalized? I mean, do you have more gas in the tank than is required to make the purchase? So once you're done, after the closing table, are you tapped out? Are your bank accounts zeroed? If they are, you might want to pause and consider whether now is the time for you to jump into the real estate market. Now, if you're the type of buyer that after the closing table, after you've brought in your down payment and all your closing costs, you still have a savings account with an emergency fund with a few months of living expenses in it, then you might be the type of buyer that should really consider jumping in now while competition is low. Now, how many months do you need to have in your emergency fund? That's a very personal question and it's beyond the scope of this video, but suffice it to say, if your account balances are zeroed out on the closing day, that should really cause you to pause and reconsider. Now, of course, that should cause you to pause and reconsider in any market, but much more in a market like this with higher interest rates, higher payments, and the threat of a recession looming. Now, if you don't meet this first criteria, are you dead in the water? Is the home ownership dream dead for you? No, of course not. In fact, failing to meet this first criteria gives you access to my #1 favorite home buying preparation tool, which is start paying yourself a mortgage now. All right, so the way you do this is you go talk to a lender or you jump onto a free mortgage calculator site like bankrate.com. You enter the cost of the home you're likely gonna buy. You enter in an appropriate amount for taxes, which in our area, El Dorado County, you can ballpark at 1.25% of the purchase price. And be sure to enter in an accurate amount for your monthly hazard insurance, which if you're in an area like El Dorado County with high brush scores, can be significant. So depending on where you are, most of these online calculators will populate more of an urban amount for hazard insurance, around $60 to $80 a month. That's gonna be wildly low if you live in a rural area or an area with higher fire scores. So be sure to get that right. Now, once you've done that, it'll be able to spit out for you your PITI payment. PITI simply stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. This represents the entire payment you're gonna make. Now all you do is take your current rent, subtract that from that PITI payment, and pay yourself the difference every month into your savings account. I love this because it gives you the chance to live with the payment right now and see, does it make you house poor or can you handle it easily? Now, the great part about it is, as you're figuring this out, your savings is growing every month, which makes you a better capitalized buyer who's prepared to enter the housing market quicker and take advantage of opportunities as they arise in 2024. It's a win-win-win for you. Look, if you're getting any value out of this video at all and you're thinking about buying or selling a home in El Dorado County and you want to continue to get a solid foundation and education so you can enter the market as an informed consumer, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification, check off all so you don't miss a future video. On to criteria number 2. Now this one is insanely simple. Let's start by unpacking a snappy little aphorism that's bouncing around the industry right now. You've probably already heard it a bunch. Marry the house, date the rate. Yuck. Just yuck. I hate snappy little aphorisms like that. They remind me of this guy. You all know the guy. This is a guy that's trying to convince you that if you simply drink one less latte a week, you can afford whatever it is he's selling. I hate that guy, and you hate that guy too. As an industry, we need to move away from these snappy aphorisms and into giving people nuanced real estate advice that helps them make good choices. So to that end, let's pick apart what they mean by marry the house, date the rate. What they mean is you can buy a house now in 2024 in this lower competitive environment while the rates are high, and then refinance the home and bring the rate and thus the payment down in the future when rates drop and competition for homes is higher. Now that's the very same advice Barbara Corcoran was giving without all the snappy aphorisms and bad latte art. That's sound financial advice given you meet the following 3 criteria. 1, you can afford the payment in the first place at these higher interest rates. 2, you can continue to afford that payment if interest rates don't come down. And 3, you will still qualify for a loan in the future when it comes time to refi. Now, number 3 is a big one, and it's one I don't hear anybody giving as a caveat to that marry the house, date the rate advice that's so prevalent in the industry right now. So you're gonna wanna stick around and hear number 3. But first, let's jump into number 1. Can you afford it in the first place? These high interest rates have driven monthly mortgage payments up by $1,000, $2,000, even more in some cases, depending on the loan amount. So if you're still working with round numbers of affordability in your head based on the old interest rates, you owe it to yourself to talk to a lender or jump online and use a free mortgage calculator and calculate out an accurate PITI mortgage payment based on today's rates and make sure you can even afford it in the first place. Which brings me to number 2. Let me ask you a question. What happens if rates don't come down and you're stuck with this payment for the long haul? Look, I agree with Barbara Corcoran and I agree with most of the talking heads in the country that interest rates are going to come down into the 6s, and if we're lucky, maybe into the 5s again. But that comes with 2 important caveats. 1, we don't know when. We've got some good ideas and we've got some data pointing us in the right direction, but ultimately no one knows exactly when those rates will come down. So if those rates don't come down within a timeline that you need them to, can you continue to make this payment at the higher interest rates? And 2, we could all be wrong. It's happened before. What if they don't come down? If they don't come down, can you continue to make this mortgage payment without it being a significant financial liability for you? If you can, then jumping into the 2024 housing market might be right for you. And if you can't, it should cause you to pause and reconsider. Number 3 is a big one, in my opinion, one of the most important, which is that everyone's financial situation is dynamic. And the fact that you qualify for a loan today based on your current income, your current debt profile, and your current employment is no guarantee that you will still qualify for a loan when it comes time to refinance into a lower interest rate. Now, between now and then, you could lose your job. We'll talk more about that further on in the video. You could rack up a bunch of unforeseen medical debt. You could rack up a bunch of consumer debt, all of which could mean you no longer qualify for a loan, which means you can't refinance and you're stuck with the higher interest rate. Now that means you married the house and you married the rate. And the people throwing around this snappy marry the house, date the rate aphorism are failing to make it clear that there's no guarantee that you'll be able to refinance when the time comes. So you need to be sure that if the worst happened, you can continue to make this payment in the future, even if it stays at this high interest rate. Now, you might not want to make that payment, but if you can make it without it being a huge financial liability for you, then you might be the type of buyer that should jump into the 2024 real estate market. And if it would represent a huge financial liability for you or a big stressor for your family, you might want to pause and consider if now is really the time for you to jump in. Just take a minute and think back. Has your financial situation ever changed on you and ever changed on a dime? I know mine has, and many of my clients' financial situations have changed too. I had a close friend and client during the pandemic whose parents' health started to fail. It started to fail to the point where he really needed to quit his job, retire early, and become their full-time caretaker. Now, because he was young at the time he retired, he can't access his retirement funds, giving him effectively no income. No income equals no loan. So had he been following the marry the house, date the rate advice, he would have been stuck with that higher interest rate for a long time, possibly forever. Now, thankfully, that wasn't his situation. That didn't happen to him, but it could have. And it's one of many examples of the way your financial situation can change that could cause you trouble with this refinance plan in the future. I had another client who was selling their home and purchasing a new one. I had told them before we get into contract to sell your home, you need to have the lender pull your credit, both of your credit, and make sure you qualify for the loan for the new house that you want. Because once you're in contract in California as a seller, there's really very little way for you to go ahead and get out of that contract. Basically, the buyer has to blow 2 separate timelines before you can back out. They assured me they had. We went forward, we got their home into contract, and we got them into contract on a beautiful new home for their family. About a week into the transaction, I get a call from the lender that says, oops, they never did actually have him run credit. They assumed their credit was good because a few months prior to buying this home, they had purchased a luxury car and their credit was excellent at that time. So they assumed it should be just fine now. Unfortunately, in the interim, an old collections popped up. Now, this was a cell phone bill for less than $50 from their college days. The bill had been being mailed to an address they hadn't even lived at for over a decade, and it was some rental home. They never got the bills, and it got sold to multiple collections agencies. The newest agency that collected it recorded it against the wife's credit report, and they did it in a funky way. Had it just trashed her credit score, we could have based it all on the husband's score, and they could have bought their home and been fine. But they recorded it in such a way that made the wife's score unreportable. No score, no loan, period. They were dead in the water. Their buyers wouldn't let them out of the contract to sell their home, so they were facing down having to be renters or worse, homeless. Very hard to find a rental home with 2 kids and 2 large dogs where they live. Now, thankfully, the story has a happy ending. It took a week or 2 and about 14 lenders, but I found someone who could solve the problem for us, and they're still in that home today. But it very well could have gone the other way. These are just 2 examples of ways people's financial situations can unexpectedly shift and cause them problems in qualifying for a loan. And those things are even worse in an economy where we're facing down the threat of a looming recession and your job status could change quickly. Now, the third simple criteria to determine whether you're the type of buyer who should be buying a home in 2024 is, do you have stable employment in a recession-proof industry? Now, of course, nobody really knows whether their industry is recession-proof, but all industries are not created equal when it comes to recession. If you work at the grocery store, well, everybody's still got to eat. You're probably going to be all right. If you work as an installer for high-end synthetic lawns, maybe this is the type of market where people aren't refinancing their homes and doing big remodel projects. So you may want to reconsider whether you're going to have stable employment if we really do slide into recession. Now look, Barbara Corcoran got the underlying market mechanics dead on this one, but her advice that now is the very best time for everyone to buy a home has to be run through the filters of your own personal financial situation. Are you a well-capitalized buyer? Can you afford this payment even if rates don't come down or you can't refi? Are you employed in a stable recession-proof industry? If you are, 2024 is an excellent time to consider buying. And if you're not, you may want to consider staying on the fence. Now look, if you still don't know whether you're the type of buyer who should think about jumping in right now, feel free to reach out, send me an email, shoot me a text, give me a call. I've worked with hundreds of families just like you and helped them begin their home buying journey and help them get to the right answers to these questions for them. But none of that will matter if you're not ready to buy a home in 2024. So for that, watch this video right here for my 4 top tips for you to be prepared to take advantage of the lower competitive purchase environment in 2024. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.